Pain and suffering, two aspects that humans have been trying to run away from ever since they knew themselves. Pain, suffering, negativity, these are aspects that humanity needs to spend a lot more time around. Many might probably accuse me that I support the idea of suffering. I do not support suffering. Obviously, I'm highly against it. The point that I want to present is people need to realize one thing. People need to realize that they have to stay more in touch with their suffering. This doesn't mean that they have to suffer. They have to realize why they are suffering. And I said two great words. Realization is something that doesn't exist in this world because this society is fake. This society is so fake that, the truth scares people. This society is so fake that so many people are just shallow. No feelings, no emotions, no nothing. Not even a survival impulse. You can almost even call them artificial intelligence because a robot, well, unless they're programmed to, they don't know anything. You can look at so many people, they don't know fear, they don't have any self-preservation or anything. It's just like it's an empty husk. You can even say that most of humanity is more or less replicated AIs undercover. Obviously, that sounds very funny, but realization, as I was saying, it's a concept which is almost entirely lacking in this society. When you go to school, when you're taught things by other people, you're only drilled those things in your head. You're told certain things, you're taught all the things that even yourself you can find nowadays on the internet. Back in the times when our parents and our grandparents, well, better said, when our parents were our age, you had to go to a library. You had to read stuff. You actually had to borrow the books. You had to read them. Nowadays you can find excerpts. You can find everything online from the comfort of your own house. Everything is much easier. But at the same time, it also tends to be, much cheesier. Because people nowadays seem to cheese their way through life, right? They seem to simply try to enjoy things, but they don't know what they enjoy. And at the same time, they don't know what enjoyment actually means. Most people say that enjoyment is just having sex or living in the primal urges and, pleasing those primal urges, like, gorging upon food and, having pity parties and such. When it comes to realization is something supremely powerful. It is something beyond the mind, because to realize something, that is something that becomes something beyond you. See, people don't understand one thing. Sooner or later we will all die. We will all perish. Not as a race. The human race will live longer than any one of us. And if the end of the human race would have to come, well, who are we to fight it? After all, every physicality in this world has its limited existence. See, what we call time doesn't exist. It's something we have created. As a dimension, it doesn't exist. We have created this concept to measure how much, let's say, someone lives, but that how much is only determined by units we have created. What we are measuring is nothing else than lunar and solar cycles, right? How long the moon is, taking to simply whirl around the earth, but we're not even measuring that. We're just measuring the flow of our existence, right? I would call it the outflow, because, well, let's actually call it the dissipation, right, of our existence. Because when you are born, when any one of us is born, we're technically like a balloon that is slowly leaking air, right? We're slowly deflating in a way, because when we are born young, we are very vibrant. Now, even if we don't live in a ironically stupid society, And we get loaded with all sorts of things that put us down and have us live in fear and disorders, so that we get sick and all the gates of madness open towards us, right? Through all the industries that barely wait to exploit us while we're no longer healthy. Well, the vibrancy of our body still decreases. Honestly, it's what happens to all physicality. Though it may not feel so apparent with inanimate objects, right? But physicality is something that is slowly draining away. All that is physical has, let's say, an expiry date. Now, time exists only because we needed a concept that, measures, let's call it the flow of time, how we would want to imagine it. But ultimately, we just measure, how fast, life drains out of each and every one of us. Because the process of life, the vibrancy of life is what decreases slowly and surely. See, many people love distracting themselves. They love watching movies, they love doing anything that would prevent them, from feeling the pains of their misaccomplishments. See, if you watch a football match, that's 45 minutes, right? And then another 45 minutes. 15 minutes a break, and then most likely extra time. So let's say it's 2 hours. By the time the match ended, right, you will say 2 hours have passed. Most likely you won't say, because people who distract themselves, they feel that, they have infinite time. This is one of the greatest problems of people. They feel that they will live forever. You can say the match took 2 hours, or you can say you're 2 hours closer to your grave. Because honestly, that's what happens to all of us. In our life, it doesn't matter what journey you seek, right? What objectives you choose for yourself to follow in life. There is one way only, and that way is towards the next life. Because we have portrayed death as a horrible thing, but well, that is nothing else than the flourishing of a new life. So, ultimately, the only way for us all is, well, the grave, ultimately, right? I don't want to sound so grave, pun intended, but this is how things are. If people do not realize things, they won't know them from a far superior nature than the mind. Because the mind is a very good, let's say, space to store information. Information that is mostly usable for survival, right? As I've been saying in previous videos, this existence of ours is based on 3 levels of survival. There is the survival of the physical body, there is the survival of the social, or at a social level, and we also have survival of the self, right? The survival of the ego. Well, I kind of don't believe that much in the ego, but the point is, there is a survival of the identification of the persona, right? Because the ego is the persona. A persona in Latin, the word persona means a mask. Literally, persona was used for the masks that, actors would put on their faces to depict different deities, natural elements, or even people, right? Because theater always had this tendency to showcase things that are beyond the mundane, more or less. So they always required masks and special costumes, right, to portray that which was beyond humans, right? Because when it came to portraying a certain human figure, well, that wasn't necessarily that hard. Makeup existed ever since humanity knows itself. It's just that in time it became better and better, but there were ways to easily represent, a human figure. But when it came to far more complex things, well, people needed to, use different other means. Realization is a power beyond the mind. School teaches you things, but unfortunately there is a profound lack of practice. And the lack of practice keeps you at a very superficial level, because you're taught math, but you're not taught the importance and the correlation of it with the whole world, with sacred geometry and the such, for example. You're taught numbers and how they correlate, but unfortunately school teaches you these superficially. You just learn them mechanically. And when you learn things mechanically, there is no room for, well, realization. Realization is that profound sensation that changes you when you suddenly, well, figure out that something is in a certain way. And you also realize the most important factor. Realization allows you to observe, to understand, to actually fully perceive the correlation in between that and the other things. Because this sick society is nothing else than some spare parts that try to act as a whole. The superficiality of the people employed in so-called taking care of the masses, they act just like pieces, pretending that they are part of a whole that would even be working. But if you take pieces apart, they separately don't work. It's just a big illusion. That's why this sick society is just going down and down. It's going down the drain. There's no more place for it. Humanity needs to wake up. I mean, so many people are waking up. Those who can actually wake up. I'm most certain that, a lot of the people in here function just like AI in most video games. That's why you have so many complacent people. They just love doing nothing else than responding to what the system says. It's like that's their only Bible and that's what they're here to do. So, in a world where there's no realization, there will always be ignorance and shallowness. Where there's ignorance, there's shallowness. Where there's shallowness, there's obviously pain. Because pain, as I've been saying, is the only guide that exists in this world. And its purpose is to take you towards there where it doesn't hurt. Its purpose is to take you away. Because everywhere you'd go, if there is something that hurts you, there is an impulse within you to move away from that, to find a way out of the pain. Many people have even given that up. We are the only species on this planet that can actually do that because of having been taught thousands upon thousands of generations that, we had to learn hopelessness. Whatever there is this God and you can't do anything and you're always hopeless. You always have to give your power ever since you are young to dumb parents, to a dumb schooling system that doesn't give a shit about you. And obviously to a society that doesn't even give a shit about you. So let's forget anything else, because if people are mistreated in this society and everything is, enacted as if it must be a lie, or if it is a truth, it will hurt the narcissistic minds and sociopathic minds that, have this impression that they rule everything. Well then, that is a problem. See, one day a vulture asked a parrot, "Why is it that you are locked up in a cage?" And the parrot responded, "Because I am one that can speak. This is how this present day world feels like." Why I'm saying that people need to realize their pains. Why is it that you're causing pains upon yourself? See, the way people treat you, that is their own karma. That is the only thing they know. That is why there is no forgiveness for them. Because you can't forgive someone for not doing something beyond what they could. That's basically psychiatry. To have the expectation of someone to do more than they can actually do at their current level, that's basically psychiatry. Why am I saying this? Well, very simply. Quite very simply. Everyone is, let's say, locked by a certain potential. Obviously, people can go beyond that potential, but there are lessons to be learned. And everything progresses at a certain pace. That is why there are wise people in this world, and there are people who are less wise. Everyone is at their own, let's say, spiritual level, and at their own level of mental and psychological and emotional acceptance. That is why there are thousands, probably even millions of lifetimes that, bits of life that come on this planet have to experience so that they reach a certain level. Going even further, people need to realize that, the pains they are creating, well, do those pains actually belong to you? Are they actually entirely your pains? Many people will come and unload their pains upon you. You'll hear the frustrations of your parents and the lamenting of your parents, probably ever since you were born. And then you're probably gonna take them upon your shoulders as if they're also yours. But guess what? Other people's lamentations are other people's lamentations. Don't treat me as if your problems are my problems as well. If you don't know anything, then create problems in your life. You just better be solving them, because I'm not gonna move my finger for that. And guess what? Not even God will move their small finger or whatever finger to simply improve your life. If you look at religion and how people, well, let's say Christians, the superficial ones, treat religion, you always hear, oh God, why me? And please God, give me, right? When you say please, it's always a disconnection. Because you say please, you always feel weak. You disconnect from yourself. You give your power, right? And when you say give, you speak from let's say, a position of neediness, right? In business, there is a point that says this: when you want to be an authority figure, it is best that people call you. Because when you are the one who's called, you are the expert. When you are calling someone else, you are the one in need. They who are called are, well, let's say not always the experts, but are always the ones who will get the better deal. Because if people call you, you are the one who has the power and therefore the responsibility. Let's not forget, power does not exist without responsibility. If power exists without responsibility, that's ignorance. Because responsibility is the death of all ignorance. When people take responsibility for their life, obviously slowly and surely, because not everyone will, jump straight into full-scale responsibility, well, you see, the point is, responsibility indeed is the death of all ignorance. Now, when it comes to moving further in life, people need to realize, why are they suffering? Why are you investing all your time into hating other people for things that they are doing? Isn't the fact enough that if they done you something bad today and they're gonna do it tomorrow, probably the next year as well? I mean, they've done it for probably the past 5 years, most likely they'll do it for the next 10. I mean, if someone's been tormenting you, and the worst case scenario, they happen to be your parents, if they've been tormenting you ever since you were young, so therefore the most defenseless, well, think about what mental and psychological games you'll be going as you all get older. Because once you get older, you have chances of waking up. And ignorant people are always unconsciously knowledgeable of the fact that they can lose you. See, I've been speaking very little about true parenting, but I've been saying one thing. When it comes to parenting, it is your responsibility as a parent to train the mind of the child. The child's mind is basically like an empty hard drive. What you choose to put into it, well, that's entirely up to you. But ultimately, there is a simple choice that all parents face when they have children. And it can be resumed through one single question. What is it that you want to make out of your child? You want to make the very next enemy of your life? Or you want to make someone who simply will love you? Because love doesn't mean sex. Love doesn't mean shallow hugs and, buying your children fancy stuff to simply have them distract themselves from the ignorance that you're dealing them with, right? Because if you're ignorant towards your child, well, your child may simply suffer a long time. You've simply destroyed an entire life almost. And then there's also the point that sooner or later they will simply give you up. Because if you haven't been giving them the love that they needed for so long, when they were the most defenseless, they can find love in the world. Or the worst case scenario for you, they may actually come to realization of the fact that they may not need your love in the first place. They might actually find love within themselves. I'm not supporting this illusion of love yourself, right? Love is a current. It's a currency, okay? In a sex society, it is always a currency because people are selling their love for whatever favors they can get. But love is just an energy. If you allow it to flow through you without any prejudice, it simply opens up portals and dimensions within you. And it allows so much more introspection. I can say this after 15 years of introspection. Well, at least 15 years, but let's keep playing this game that it's just 15 years. Usually, I can say that, well, I've been introspective quite ever since I was young, being always full of questions. And, well, you see, usually shallow people don't like questions because, well, in the illusion of perfection that they feel they can't answer questions, not even the simplest ones at times. So obviously, when someone heavyweight like me comes in with the heavyweight questions, well, obviously they won't be liking me. Which can be quite frustrating in a way, because you'll feel that you just live in a world where you don't belong. But, well, you kind of start asking yourself the question, do you really want to belong in a sick society? Do you really want to be a brick in a wall? Because when you're a brick in a wall, well, a brick can never be unique. While each brick is technically unique, they're just like people in a sick society. Just another thing to be used and then discarded upon use. If a brick breaks, well, there'll always be one to replace it. If someone conscious in this world breaks because of this world's sickness, there is always 1,000 more ignorance that can replace them. A sick society only seeks further sickness, because a sick society is like a man doing drugs. It is nothing without its drugs. So a sick society is nothing without its sick deviance. If you have a madman speaking and yelling about things, well, if people ignore them and mind their own business, well, that's one point. But if other thousands of people simply hop in and support them, well, that's when you have a questionable society. So the problem about this sick society, this sick world, is why is it that you're creating so much pain in your life, so much drama? Like, so many people are so drawn to drama. It's like the only thing they cherish. It's like the only thing they worship. Life is so much more than just drama. Like, why all the drama? People crying about, I don't know what fake star that simply, I don't know, they separated from their so-called beloved. Like, honestly, why would someone else's troubles necessarily be your problems? Okay, sure, no one should feel cold towards other people, but in this society that promotes actors, right? Because everyone in this society that supports this sick society is nothing else but an actor. They don't have feelings or emotions. They just have shallow emotions, and that's just, theatrical play. I've been living around such people ever since I was born, so it's not hard to observe them. Even their facial expression, if you can read facial expressions, is like, it's just out there. You don't even need to dive into the people. Like, I have the two fail-safe systems. It's like when you look at someone's facial expression, it tells you a whole novel about them. It's like it's so much information that you can get from someone's physical body's posture, as well as their facial expression, that the mind simply cannot support that. But subconsciously, you can understand all of those. That's why I'm not filling my mind with things and ideas about people that I see. And then you simply look them in the eyes. If you don't see anything, it's like that being is simply not existent there. That's basically a shallow being. Now there's all these, new age spiritualists saying that, oh, they're droids, calling them bots or whatever. All these concepts simply don't have any importance, okay? Whatever someone is, you don't need to give any importance, because importance or meaning, when you give too much meaning, it becomes far more important than your creation, than your life itself. That's why so many people distract themselves. And when you have people distracting themselves, it becomes like a drug. Then you have so many new generations coming in, accumulating even more karma, getting even more intoxicated with this distraction. And nowadays, after thousands of such generations, we have so many people still distracting themselves, because that's what, generationally speaking, their ancestors have been going through. And most of the people will simply not, many will simply not survive, because humanity is made to break through this generational trauma. Nowadays, this is all that this time is about, breaking that generational trauma. And when that will happen, people who aren't ready to give up that generational karma, they will go cuckoo. Obviously, to many this would sound like, fancy stuff or whatever, but see, things will go the way they will go. We don't need to argue much about this. But the thing about understanding life is that being shallow is super easy, because when you are shallow, you believe that everything that you know is, everything that there is. This shallowness creates the ignorance that we've been through for thousands of years. And this has a huge impact nowadays, and especially with the pandemic and the such. It has a huge impact on our people. Imagine what we are doing to our children. Many parents never even wanted their children, but they did have the children just because of, family pressure, or, neighbors questioning you like they've done with me, like, when are you gonna get married? And I look at some people and I say, just because you're suffering with your imperfect wife or husband in your imperfect relationship, and you're creating such a fuss about it, it doesn't mean that I'll have to suffer as well. I'm not here to suffer and cause pain. If you are to look at the scale of this universe, do you think God is gonna ever worry about you and your suffering? Everything in this universe is functioning perfectly. The animals, they are perfect in their behavior, right? The stars are all there where they should be. The sun rises and, sets at the exact perfect moment. The moon is there where it should be. It has the perfect influences upon us. So everything in this universe is perfect and going on perfectly fine, even with and without your pains. So why the worry? Now, obviously, we all have our own social worries and the such, but the more you focus on them, it's like one moment of worry equals one moment of not thinking towards a solution, how to solve your worrying. One moment of anger is one moment lost of happiness. Now, obviously, no one will ever be happy like all the time. There are fluctuations of energy, influences, and the such, yes. But how we accept those and how we go on, that is technically what our karma is. How we move through things without letting them influence us. Because when we let things to influence us, that is our karma. That is when karma is created, when you react to things. When you let them flow, whatever comes, you accept it and you embrace it. Because obviously you cannot beat the inevitability of life. Things will happen. Some will be good, some will be bad. Just move ahead. You don't have any other choice. When something happens, there's no choice. You simply accept it and you move away, or simply fuss about it. The psychiatry is all in your head. When we create these frustrations, we will create frustrations that will be further more powerful in our children. And if you think this is not going to have any influence on you, well, think again. Why am I saying this? Because our children will grow. The children of today, the frustrations that we give them, the children of today will be the monsters of tomorrow. They will be tomorrow's police people, law enforcers, you know, maybe lawyers, politicians, maybe bankers, people who will have a great influence on you, directly or indirectly. And you've taught them to be monsters, so they will be better than what you've taught with them, right? And what you've taught them as well. Because children are here to best their parents. So if you only show them your denial stage, right? Your denial phase, that of simply denying everything that they are, well, it's okay, don't worry. They'll become even greater monsters and they'll cancel you later on. Because you're gonna get older. Many parents simply turn their children into enemies. That's the problem. And we are not teaching children to realize this. Because many people simply are useless as they are. They're just living their life for no cause. Now, there is no cause in life anyways, but, many people just live as a devastation to others. That's what ignorance means. To always be at the detriment of others. But the point is, when people don't realize this, they'll create even more pain. And misery loves company. So all the children that we are traumatizing today, they'll become the monsters of tomorrow. And children grow up. You'll also grow up and become older, feeble. You'll be the one needing the children. But if you've turned them into your enemies, well, they'll be just like prey, right? They are prey when they are young, because that which is fragile will always be picked upon. That's why children have always been raped and abused and used in society, because they're defenseless. But when they grow, they will become the ones if you have taught them to become so. They will act based on what you have taught them. So all this being said, hopefully this video is, introspective enough. You are appreciated. Take care. Ferenc on board signing out.